Somebody this weekend, or yet last night, as a matter of fact, she goes, "Why do you call Laura Ingraham?" And I'm like, "You mean the Ingram angle?" "Yeah, you're purposely mispronouncing her name." And I'm like, "She calls me Hannity, so I'll call her, well, Ingraham."
Where have they been
you
for the
spell
past?
your name Ingraham.
Yeah. Where have they been for the past 20 years? You've been saying that wrong. That's all I can say.
I know.
Hey, Hannity, are you going to announce our
All right, so we got to make an announcement. Can we make it now?
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
We were all together tonight, and I got to see you and Tucker, which is great because I don't always get to see you guys. The next time we're all together, we're all going to come on the show and have a little powwow.
A little bit. And there is a charity tennis tournament.
I haven't picked up a tennis racket in years. I play golf like an old person now.
Oh, my God. First of all, you've challenged me over the years for so many tennis tournaments. And you're like, oh, I can beat you in tennis. Now I finally have been playing tennis. I can play it.
When my daughter was 10 and she killed me, I think it was time to give it up.
All right, Hannity, you chickened out again. Great to see you. Have a great rest of the night.
Thanks.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingram Angle, live from New York City tonight. We have is it immodest to say a riveting show for you? Well, okay, it's immodest. Rudy Giuliani has more than a few new comments about the Mueller probe and some new allegations by Michael Cohen. I'm going to try to make sense of it all for you. Plus, why might the TSA be spying on you when you board a plane? This is I've got to say, it's a story even I can't believe, but there you have it. We'll get to it. And there are new developments in the case of a police officer shot in Florida by someone who was here on a visa. We're still trying to determine whether he was legally or illegally here. We're going to give you the very latest. Plus, first, the elites still don't get it. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Over the weekend, the libertarian-leaning Koch network hosted a Rocky Mountain retreat for donors and political leaders. Well, they used the occasion not to amplify and cheer the president's policies, but to decry them. 82-year-old Charles Koch has taken the reins of the network. He released this video in advance of the retreat. Now, he claims opportunities in the global marketplace are creating anxiety and the loss of jobs at home.
In response, we're seeing a rise in protectionism, where countries, organizations, and individuals are trying to protect themselves from these changes. They're doing whatever they can to close themselves off from the new, hold onto the past, and prevent change. This is a natural tendency, but it's a destructive one.
Destructive? Let me tell you about destruction, sir. One could also make the argument that selling out American workers and offering up our industries and our marketplace to the gods of globalism is also pretty destructive. Now, the Kochs have become billionaires by building and buying amazing companies. They're really smart guys, from steel and lumber and nylon manufacturers. Over the last 20 years, they have grown their wealth by focusing in large part on global operations. And some of that includes outsourcing jobs and relocating plants overseas. Today, Koch has a presence in 50 countries. They employ nearly 120,000 people. Only 65,000 of those people are in the United States. Now, look, God bless them. But America shouldn't be facilitating the outsourcing of jobs either through really lame policy, like regulation, or through poorly negotiated trade deals. Now, don't get me wrong. The Kochs have done some great work on tax reform, on stuff like deregulation, and also in the area of education. Last year, they spent $90 million on university programs, and they're committed to expanding their support for K through 12 education. But I have a question for you. How effective will their education efforts be if Americans enter a world where China dominates most major industries, including the areas of STEM, science, technology, and so forth, including things like artificial intelligence? We can't just look the other way while China, and a lot of other countries, by the way, game the global trading system and rack up huge trade surpluses. Also, of course, IP, theft, unfair subsidies, and so forth. Any fair-minded person would have to agree now with what the White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow, a free trader himself, said over the weekend.
People say, well, President Trump's tariffs are damaging this, that, and the other thing. I say, don't blame President Trump. He inherited a completely broken world trading system, including a World Trade Organization, most particularly China, but not only China, okay? He's trying to fix it.
Now, remember the Koch supported that job and sovereignty-killing Trans-Pacific Partnership and the NAFTA agreement that both, of course, Bush, Obama, and until the campaign, at least, Hillary championed. The Koch network, like the rest of the GOP old guard, is positively furious with Trump's use of tariffs to level the playing field. In fact, they announced last month that they've committed to a multi-million-dollar, multi-year campaign to oppose what Trump's doing on trade. I have a question, though. Why would they want to lock us into these never-ending trade deficits when the president's efforts so far are actually bearing fruit? We saw what happened with the EU last week. South Korea already renegotiated their deal. And watch what happens in the next few weeks with both Mexico and China. It's going to be really good. Meanwhile, American workers and even farmers, some of them have been caught in the crossfire of Trump's tough trade battle with China. But they're standing by the president. Why? Well, I think that's kind of why would they? Well, they like that he's fighting for them, even if it hurts their interests in the short term.
I'm a good American. I believe that we all have to toe the line.
So you're okay with bearing the brunt of these tariffs?
Am I willing to take my lumps for the better, for the benefit of the entire country? Yes, I personally am.
You're willing to weather the storm for a certain amount of time, but how long is too long?
Well, the Scottish in me says to the death.
Oh, Scottish in them. I love that. Well, don't you want that kind of deep sense of patriotism? They want to make money, obviously, but they're also deeply patriotic Americans, and they're willing to take that hit. I think the Kochs can learn a lot from those regular Americans and what they said this. I love that tape. Trump's immigration plan, by the way, also displeases the old guard in the GOP, that big Republican donor class. Now, why? Why are they so fixated on that? Because they love the flood of cheap labor into our market. But Trump sees the border and enforcement and the whole deal at our southwest border very differently, and he articulated it today.
Our countries have learned through hard experience that border security is national security. They are one and the same.
Arguments of national security and culture are totally lost on the billionaire set. But for most Americans, these are major concerns. Now, the Koch network is taking it a step further. They're now going so far as to financially punish some politicians who are supportive of the president's agenda. They announced today that they will not be supporting GOP's North Dakota Senate candidate, Kevin Cramer, who's trying to unseat Democrat Heidi Heitkamp. Now, what's the Koch reason for that? Well, the Republican candidate supported Trump on both trade and immigration. At that confab I was mentioning earlier in Colorado, Charles Koch made a big deal about, quote, uniting people who were previously divided. But what does that mean? Like, how are these latest retaliatory efforts actually doing that? Trump is the one uniting people. For all the talk of divisiveness, Trump enjoys an 88% approval rating among Republicans, according to the Wall Street Journal, an NBC poll. Only George W. Bush in the immediate aftermath of 9/11 saw support like that. But the Koch network and others talk a good game about unity, embracing change, and seizing opportunities. But when a president comes along who's actually embracing a new path, something different, on behalf of the American people, let's try a new thing now. The Kochs and the globalists just have their blinders on. They won't have any of it. I had to laugh when in the AP feature on the Koch retreat, it said the following. Democrats who invested extraordinary time and resources into attacking the Koch brothers in recent years conclude that, at least in the area of Trump, the billionaire industrialists are no longer the left's number one enemy. Oh, yeah. That's funny how that works. That's because Republicans lacked a leader for so many years that the Kochs were the only game in town. But now the left has a new enemy. It's Trump. And they're resisting him at every turn. Sadly, the Kochs are too often joining in their ranks. Like the Bushes, the Koch brothers did not support Donald Trump in 2016. Think about that. But they have certainly reaped the benefit of Trump's thriving economy. Are they prepared to take all their profits that they made over the last 2 years and, donate it to Elizabeth Warren? Because that's going to be great for their businesses? Do you think they're going to actually give them a better deal on the things that they believe in, tax reform, regulation, so forth? What a pity if the Kochs and their well-heeled donors miss the opportunity to support the president and be a part of the America First unity that people believe in. And that's the angle. Joining us now with reaction, the Washington Examiner's Byron York, Democrat and radio talk show host Chris Hahn, and Monica Crowley from the London Center for Policy Research. Great to see all of you. Monica, the Koch brothers have done a lot of good stuff, no doubt about it, but it is wild to hear them rail on against Trump's use of a tool that Bush used, Obama used, Reagan used, and that is one of the classic tools of our economic negotiation throughout American history.
Yes, well, this is yet another example of the empire striking back against Donald Trump. Trump ran on this premise that he was going to come in and smash the corrupt existing order, the corrupt status quo. And that meant the elite ruling class on both sides of the aisle, the media, and the networks like the Kochs, who are so deeply invested in the globalist agenda. He promised that he was going to smash all of that and actually represent the American worker, the American taxpayer, and America's economic interests. The reason we have Donald Trump, among many reasons, Laura, is because he went out into the heartland and he said, you know what? I see you, I hear you, and I will be your champion. And now, after just a year and a half in the presidency, he has delivered on those economic policies to exactly those people. And therefore, he represents an existential threat to the Kochs, but to the left, to the right, who is deeply invested in the cheap labor.
But they agree on a lot of the big issues. You and I have made that point before. They agree on trade, on immigration. And Chris Hahn, is it the case where it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend? I mean, if I could go back, and Byron's written about this, if you could put a loop together of what the Democrats said about the Kochs over the years, now suddenly they're against what Trump's doing on tariffs. And the New York Times and I was like, oh, well, maybe it's time to take a second look at the Koch brothers. I find that just hilarious. Go ahead.
I don't have enemies, and I don't think people should have enemies in domestic policies. You have opponents and people you disagree with, but not enemies.
Okay, you know what I mean. Don't be such a stickler. We're having fun here.
I know what you meant.
Go ahead.
I know what you meant. But on the Kochs, I was listening to my good friend Monica just now talking about the Kochs, and I say they're consistent. They were never for trade barriers. They would never stand for this $15 billion bailout to the farmers in the Midwest that the president's doing, something that Monica would have called socialism had Obama done it during his term. The Kochs are consistent, and they are consistent in their message. I don't trust that they're going to support liberals. They haven't said that they're going to support Democrats. They said they're going to stay out of Heidi Heitkamp's race. They didn't say they were going to give her some money. So, they're still going to spend about $400 million on the midterms to try to elect Republicans and conservatives who agree with their viewpoint. They are still going to be active in politics.
But what we're saying, Chris, no one's saying they're not consistent. What we're saying is their time has come and gone. I mean, they have a lot of dough. They've done some good with it. A lot of philanthropy they've done. But the era of endless wars, Byron, and these global trade agreements where America really can't get satisfaction. Frankly, what Elizabeth Warren's talked about and Bernie Sanders at different times, they've talked about these unfair trading regimes that benefit just, the well-heeled people. Those days are over in the Republican Party. There's no constituency for it. Why we have an 88% approval rating for Donald Trump. Byron.
Well, Donald Trump, the candidate in 2016, really did blow up Republican orthodoxy in some very, very key ways. And trade was one of those ways. Immigration actually was another. The Kochs have had kind of a complicated relationship with that, because if you asked them last year, they were absolutely delighted with all of the deregulation that has been taking place under the president. Happy with the tax cuts, too. Now very unhappy with trade and with immigration. I think a lot of Republicans are really going to part with them on this North Dakota thing. For example, the Kochs are now spending about $1 million to support the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Well, Republican partisans would say, well, if you don't support Republicans for the Senate, there's not going to be another Trump nominee to the Supreme Court.
Well,
yeah, that's why it's important to support the challenger to Heidi Heitkamp. Monica, there's a big talk about a potential shutdown now with with the border wall. Trump said he's not going to do this omnibus spending bill again. Let's watch what the president said today about this.
We need border security. Border security includes the wall, but it includes many other things. We have to end the lottery. We have to end the chain. The chain is like a disaster. You bring one person in and you end up with 32 people. The whole thing is ridiculous. And we have to change our laws. And we do that through Congress. So I would certainly be willing to close it down to get it done.
The Democrats are already going insane about this. Again, the old guard Republicans like, oh, you do this, it's going to blow the midterm election cycle. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think they're really afraid that Donald Trump means it. And you know what? He does. This is a man who relishes every single fight. And when he says, I'm willing to shut down the government unless I get real money to start this border wall, they know that he means it. So Republicans and Democrats are really afraid of this. Look, of the many reasons Donald Trump got elected in 2016, the primary one was illegal immigration, building the wall, and then all of the attendant issues, ending chain migration, ending the visa lottery.
They've done nothing.
Ending
They've done nothing
sanctuary cities. Right. And he knows in order to rouse his base going into the midterms, he needs to stick by this promise and shut down the government.
Chris, Chuck Schumer had no problem with shutting down the government when Trump was putting the pressure on with the DACA kids, and he wanted to give the amnesty. Chuck Schumer didn't want it, and he was fine with shutting down the government. And he tried to pass it off on Trump. It wasn't Trump. It was the Democrats. But now Trump says, I'm not doing any of these omnibus things. He should never have signed that other omnibus. He should have vetoed that back then. He wouldn't be in this situation now. But do you think the Democrats are hoping for a shutdown?
Well, no, I don't think we are, because we don't want to see people hurt by it. And I don't understand how Mick Mulvaney still has a job if the president was so upset with the budget that Mick Mulvaney wrote with Congress that the president signed. But I would say this for the president. If he doesn't get his wall before this Congress leaves, he won't get his wall. Because the best case scenario for him is that the Republicans have a smaller majority than they have now, but they're more likely going to be in the minority in the House of Representatives. The president knows that, so he's going to bat for it. So look, I get the strategy there on his part, because November's lost to them no matter what. So the president just might as well go all in, put his chips on the table, and see what he gets at it, because the Democrats are taking the House, and they might even take the Senate, and then they'll never be a wall for him. And if he doesn't get the wall, he might not get reelected. So it's a real issue for him right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're predicting a lot of things there. I mean, you're going to hit mega millions too. I mean, come on, Byron.
Please.
Look, it's.
I'd have a better backdrop.
Yeah, the House of Representatives might go Democrat. This is the shot. I think Chris is right about this. This is the shot for the border wall. You don't get this money now. I don't see you getting it at all. But Mitch McConnell said, I want to play this for you, Byron. Mitch McConnell was asked about this over the weekend, and once again, it's kick the can down the road, McConnell, on this particular issue. Let's watch.
Is the funding of the border wall going to wait until after the midterm elections?
Probably, and that's something we do have a disagreement on. And
so Homeland Security won't get funded before the midterms?
Probably not.
So you're not worried about a government shutdown before the midterms?
No, that's not going to happen.
I love how he's so dismissive. I mean, kind of like that. But, Byron, this is what they said last year. Remember last year, we're going to wait until next term.
Exactly.
The next term rolled around, and the Republicans, they just don't want this wall. Let's face it, the GOP does not want this wall.
You got to remember, this was the president's premier campaign promise. I went to a lot of Trump rallies, covered a lot of Trump rallies. This is what he said in every single one of them. And if he doesn't deliver on it, then he has not delivered on his biggest campaign promise. And I agree that if the House goes Democratic in November, just not going to happen. I think the president has not been focused enough on getting this. He has used other factors like chain migration or the visa lottery, thrown those into the mix when perhaps a straight wall for DACA deal could have been done. But if it doesn't happen now, very, very good chance it's never going to happen. You have to remember, think about the Secure Fence Act of, was it 2006? Yeah. Congress, by big majorities, passed a rule to install triple layer fencing, really
Democrats
serious
were all
fencing.
for it. Yeah,
Along
Democrats were all
large
for it.
parts of the U.S. border, passed with big majorities, both parties, was never done because the executive branch, controlled by Republicans and Democrats, never wanted to do it.
He had the deal. He had the DACA for the wall deal. That's when what you called the Schumer shutdown happened, but that was Trump's shutdown because he pulled that deal out. And if he would have just stuck with that deal like he wanted to and was talked out of it by members of his team. He had that deal and he was talked out of it.
He doubled the number of people who are going to get amnesty. He wanted an end of the perverted system of chain migration, which is tripling the number of immigrants coming in every 3 years. It's ridiculous. That's what he wanted, and he won the end of the visa lottery. So that all made sense. And he was going to give a doubling of the number of people who got amnesty. He didn't pull anything. He sweetened the deal, frankly, in my view.
He changed the deal. He changed the deal.
It was what he campaigned on, and the Democrats did not want to give him a victory on that. Guys, we're out of time. I wanted to get to one sound, but we don't have time. We'll have to do it next time. Guys, fantastic segment. Thank you so much. And by the way, Rudy Giuliani, boy, he launched a media blitz to take on Mueller. Did you check that out? And Michael Cohen. What does it mean, this showdown over the Russia probe? Well, next. Rudy G has been lighting up the airwaves today, launching a fresh salvo against the Mueller probe and former Trump attorney Michael Cohen. Now, Rudy addressed reported accusations by Cohen of a separate pre-meeting among top Trump campaign officials before the infamous June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russian nationals.
There wasn't another meeting that has been leaked but hasn't been in public yet.
Okay.
That was a meeting, an alleged meeting, 3 days before. According to Cohen, or according to the leak, maybe Cohen will withdraw this, I don't know. He says there was a meeting with Donald Jr., with Jared Kushner, with Paul Manafort, with Gates, and possibly two others, in which they, out of the presence of the president, discussed the meeting with the Russians. We checked with their lawyers. That meeting never, ever took place. It didn't happen. It's a figment of his imagination or his lying.
What to make of that? Here to discuss, John Solomon, an opinion contributor at The Hill, and General Charles McCullough is a former intelligence community inspector general who was targeted in the past for his investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. Gentlemen, it's good to see both of you. John, you've done a lot of reporting on this. I've got to get you on this first. Rudy was all over the place over the weekend, and that little exchange on a pre-meeting thing kind of pricked up everybody's ears. What do we know about this?
You know, I did a lot of reporting a year ago when this story first broke on this meeting, and if Bob Mueller was still interested in that meeting right now, seriously interested in it, Cohen's case would not be sitting in the Southern District of New York. It would be sitting in the prosecutor's office. I think there's a lot of hot air on this story, on this particular focus. It doesn't actually amount to much. There's just not any evidence that Mueller's been that interested in it for some period of time. And meanwhile, there's a lot of defense. There's a lot of things going on. I'll say this. There's no tweet that the president could issue. There's no defense that his lawyers can put out there. There's no barb that any politician can put out there that will change more the course of the Russia investigation than if the president were to declassify the remaining parts of the FISA memo. That is where this story lies, and when that is released, I think the American public's going to learn a lot about the flaws in the investigation, the circular intelligence reporting that occurred, and whether there's any evidence of collusion, which I don't believe there is based on my reporting. Also, I think we're going to learn there was other tactics, other ways of gathering information about the president that have not yet been revealed. And when they are revealed, they'll be very troubling to the American public.
It sounds like you're doing some pre-reporting there, John. I'm looking forward to reading your
Maybe
piece.
A little.
Charles, you get the sense that this is coming to a head here, both with whether the president will testify and the intensity of Giuliani's comments about Mueller and Cohen. We're going to get to your experience with the Hillary email investigation, what happened to you as Inspector General. But what is your take on how long this has dragged on for and where we are today with this Mueller probe?
Well, it's gone on for well over a year, and there's nothing wrong with the administration putting a hard deadline on this. They shouldn't interfere with the investigation. Investigators get to do what they do. But there's certainly nothing wrong. These things can't go on forever. They are stressful for everyone involved. You've had numerous people having to expend great amounts of money for legal fees. So they should put a hard deadline on this and stick to it.
Well, I think that, again, we have a scenario here where Bob Mueller took on this investigation, not as an independent counsel, but as a special prosecutor. And there's a fight going on now about whether the president is going to testify. Clearly, from the beginning, the president was like, oh, I'll testify. But you run these investigations, sending your client in to testify in this open-ended fashion would be nightmarish. I think it would be terrible for the administration. John, do you get any sense that we're going anywhere except a federal court, and probably all the way to the Supreme Court, to decide whether the president is going to be compelled to answer Mueller's questions?
The special counsel Mueller could have issued that subpoena a long time ago. It's been clear that this has not been moving in any direction that was going to come to a resolution. A lot of conversation, no resolution. If he wanted to make it happen, he could have issued that subpoena a while ago. My gut tells me that they know what they need to know about the president. They know enough to write whatever reports they're going to write and to pursue whatever prosecutions they're going to pursue. I don't get a sense of a major constitutional crisis on the horizon. I could be wrong, but he would have issued that subpoena a while ago if he had so chosen.
Charles, I also want to get your thoughts on the following. About 9 months ago or so, you revealed to our own Catherine Herridge that you were targeted by Hillary's allies for blowing the whistle on her illegal server. Now, the president is routinely mocked for continuing to bring this issue up. It sticks in his craw and the craw of a lot of us. But you said last November that's at risk due to Hillary's irresponsible handling of the classified information, and, quote, sources and methods, lives and operations were all at risk. Go into more of that for us, if you could.
Well, certainly, it sticks in my craw, too, because we started this whole thing, and we ended up referring it to the FBI. But, yeah, there were a lot of classified documents, highly classified documents, that were among this cache of documents that were on her private server. And there were open threats made to my folks who were looking into this, made to me. It's well documented at this point. And, it hit me the other day when there was this conversation about whether Jim Clapper should lose his clearance or Director Brennan. And I don't think anybody can answer right now whether or not Hillary is still cleared. I'm thinking she's probably still cleared at this point. So that's probably part of that whole security clearance discussion.
What about the other players, Charles?
Cheryl Mills,
Cheryl Mills, do they have clearances still?
I defy anyone to get a straight answer on whether or not any of them are still cleared. My sense is they probably are. I certainly would have heard if they weren't. I think we all would have heard if they weren't by now. Okay. The State Department was supposed to look at that some time ago, and I never heard anything else about it.
All right. Well, we have a lot more to get into. And, Charles, you're going to stay with us because we have a shocking investigation into how the TSA may be spying on you as you check in for your flight. This is a mind-blowing report. Every American has to see this. Coming up next. The TSA is tracking American citizens on flights without their knowing it, even if they've not been suspected of any crime or if they're under investigation at all. The Boston Globe reporting that this previously undisclosed program known as Quiet Skies. Well, what the heck? Well, the program is now generating significant criticism from within the TSA. Here with us to discuss is Boston Globe reporter Jonna Winter, who broke this story. And we're also rejoined by former Inspector General for the intelligence community during the Obama years, Chuck McCullough. This is a wild thing. First of all, Jonna, great story on this. Incredible reporting. Quiet Skies. It sounds so placid and lovely, but what is this deal? Because it seems to me that none of us know about it. I've never heard Congress talk about it. Does it work, and how could we be tracked?
Well, here's what we know. We know that thousands of ordinary Americans who are suspected of no crime and who aren't on any watch list are being followed by teams of armed undercover air marshals on domestic flights throughout the United States. When we reported this story on Sunday, there's been a bit of outrage, I suppose, and at least 4 committees on the Hill have demanded answers from TSA. So TSA will be briefing 4 committees at least later this week.
Right. You did great reporting, enough to get everybody's attention. Big piece that just came out an hour ago. I know you saw it because it's your piece. Lawmakers demand answers on Quiet Skies surveillance program after the Globe report. So these congressmen are going nuts about this now. as they should. By the way, here's the behavior checklist, Chuck, because I read this checklist and I'm like, I just flew this morning to New York. I experienced all of these things, or at least observed them. Excessive fidgeting, strong body odor, cold penetrating stare. That's the lady who wouldn't help with the overhead. Wide open staring eyes, exaggerated emotions, and facial flushing. That's just to name a few. What is this? Chuck, go ahead. Tell us why this is smart.
We've been running around for years telling people if you see something, say something.
Or smell something, apparently.
Or if you smell something, or if somebody's got a stare. Look, those items came from some study somewhere that the government, I'm sure, paid dearly for. But I'm glad that the TSA is doing this. They should keep on. This is why we pay the air marshals. But we've been telling people to do this for regular citizens. If you see something, say something. And yet we have 1811 law enforcement officers who are on the plane that we're going. They're not following people home. As long as there are.
But what are they doing? This is what I want to know. Are they keeping a database of people's names, observations about them? If these people have done nothing wrong, if they're American citizens and have done nothing wrong except
somebody darts into a restroom and changes 2, 3, 4 times in the airport.
Or maybe it's an adult diaper. Maybe
I'd like somebody
Maybe you're
to
cold
note
on a
that.
plane.
Okay, well, it's irregular, and somebody should note that somewhere. If they don't note it and something happens, then guess what happens? They get blamed for it.
Chuck,
Can I say
go ahead, Jonna. Chuck is really smart, but I'm surprised I disagree with him. Go ahead, Jonna.
The reason why this story is out and the reason why I knew anything about this to begin with is because the air marshals who are literally working these flights have said this is not the best use of taxpayer money, and this is leaving us vulnerable as a country and on aircraft because we are diverting our resources to follow people who are not suspected of anything.
Yeah, well, this was started in 2010, everyone should know. So this has been going on for 8 years. And I hope the Inspector General of Homeland Security, if we even have one, do we have one, by the way, Chuck?
I think there's an acting over there right now.
Oh, there's an
It
acting.
was John Ross,
okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, I
They've
hope John
only
gets
been
to examine whether this is, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't violate Fourth Amendment concerns.
There are
This
going
has
to
only
be
been happening since
individual
March,
cases of
surveillance
misconduct,
teams.
but if they have guidelines and guidelines can be enforced, you're going to have problems case by case.
Yeah.
But we've been telling people for years, if you see something,
Yeah, but
say
that's
something.
people. That's not the government.
Not that.
We have a constitution.
Well, we
the
don't
people
want the government
can do
to say
anything.
something if they see something?
Well,
I
no,
would
but
think we would want the law
but that's
enforcement
not
officers
this.
Talking about
This is not this
databases.
program.
Go ahead, Jonna.
I mean, one, this is not see something, say something. These are trained law enforcement officers who take it very seriously to become whistleblowers. This is not, as you know, this is not a decision made lightly to come forward about this program. They truly feel like we are putting the country at risk by following people when there's no reason to be doing so and collecting vast minute-by-minute information about what they're doing from the moment they're spotted and identified by the gate at their departure airport up to taking note of the license plate of the vehicle that picks them up in the arrival city. Everyone they talk to, every type of phone, every phone conversation, are they on a computer? Are they sleeping? This is a lot more than see something, say something. It's just not that. This is above and beyond, and these are ordinary Americans who are
I'm glad
suspected
they're
of
doing
nothing.
it, and I hope they keep on doing it because that's what we pay them to do.
I don't pay them.
The government does.
Chuck, I don't pay them to be keeping tabs on grandma who happens to have facial flushing and face touching.
There are real threats, and the air marshals would like to cover
those. If we're looking for
those.
irregularities, which is, I'm sure that list came from somewhere, you can enforce controls on
Wait a second.
That's not the best defense.
Okay, wait a second. Chuck, you as Inspector General of the intel community saw all this irregularity with big government. You saw irregularity and, frankly, stuff that was happening that could have hurt national security. So you saw people with good intentions go totally awry, correct?
But this is different. We're not leaving the airport, my understanding is. These are people in planes and in the airport who are doing things like ducking into a bathroom and changing 3 or 4 times in a very short period of time. That's weird. And that's irregular behavior.
That's not what this program's doing, though. Respectfully.
Well,
that's
guys,
not my understanding.
Guys, let me just say one of the other things on the checklist. This, by the way, TSA has a $800 million budget. That's all I'll say. gripping.
But there's less than 3,000 flying air marshals. There's more than 40,000 domestic flights a day. If you are choosing to follow the people who are not suspected of any crime and who are not on any
also,
terror
no one
watch
wants to be
list,
profiled. I mean, we don't want to do what Israel does because that offends people. Maybe that's kind of why we're doing
we
this
don't
stuff.
have enough people to be doing that. This is what the air marshals are saying.
Well, this has been going on for 8 years,
taken
right?
off
all
flights
of
where
a
there's
sudden,
threats
8
to
years
people
after
following
they
people
started
on
the
this program.
I want to add another piece of data here, okay? Because we're going to get more answers on this, I hope, this week, and that's because Jonna did the reporting, and I'm happy we're having this conversation. Maybe some good can come of this, but right now it makes my antenna go up. Okay, here are some of the other things. Rapid eye blinking. Adam's apple jump. I guess that's when you swallow. And then gripping or white knuckling bags. I white knuckled my bags in Minnesota today because I was. I mean, some of these things really are kind of ridiculous.
Someone noticed.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being observed.
If that's the comprehensive list, okay. But my guess is those are a few items out of a much larger list.
Okay.
So I would want context on that.
Okay, and
okay,
Jonna,
I can give you that context.
Jonna, keep on this story. We got to keep reporting on this story. Thank you for being with us. Chuck, invaluable analysis from you. We're going to have you back. We haven't gotten into our Hillary email questions. We don't have enough time. We need like a 3-hour show. The case of a Florida police officer shot by a Haitian immigrant takes a tragic turn. Stay with us. Less than a week after he was shot and wounded at a gas station while responding to a call, Florida police officer Adam Jobbers Miller has tragically succumbed to his injuries. Miller's killer, Wisner Desmarais, as you may remember from our coverage last week, came to this country from Haiti when he was 9 years old. He had managed to escape conviction in the past, but now ICE has filed an immigration detainer hold on him. Inexplicably, the city of Philadelphia just announced that they will no longer grant ICE access to arrest databases like the one Desmarais was actually discovered on. Here to debate this is Claude Arnold, the former ICE special agent in charge of L.A., and immigration attorney Alan Orr. We were so worried about Officer Jobbers Miller over the weekend because he was in intensive care and we thought he might be improving, but that came across my phone over the weekend. Your heart sinks, as it does, for anyone gunned down in the United States. Tragic.
United States. And look, we have enough criminals and cop killers of our own. We certainly don't need to import any from elsewhere. And the fact is, if Mr. Desmarais had been removed from the country, he was here illegally, then this police officer would be alive.
Alan Orr.
Hi. First, condolences to the family and the community for losing an officer. I thank him for his service. But I think the issue tonight is, one, it's not clear from the court filings that this individual is undocumented or illegal, that they are probably an immigrant with a green card that is deportable, but I haven't seen that in the facts. And if you sort of read the case hearing today from his statements, it clears that this person might have some mental deficiencies, as he assumed that everybody was after him. So the thing that I wanted to sort of say tonight is that what is the issue in this case is not his immigration status, but crime in the United States. And when we sort of look at the failure of immigration, is not at this individual immigrant, but we should be looking at Congress for what they haven't done.
Well, right now we find ourselves in a situation where people are still allowed to walk across our southwest border where there's no fence, or a fence that's half torn down, or you could hop over easily, or you could swim the Rio Grande. And ICE has stopped, Border Patrol, has stopped MS-13 gang members. I think it was just last week, the week before, stopped known gang members who have actually been deported out of the country and stopped on their way back in. So there clearly is an effort by the cartels, by human traffickers, to bring people into the country, both illegally, obviously, and also to help gang activity in the United States, to grow the gang ranks, to replenish gang ranks. That's just a fact. So while, of course, Americans commit crimes every day, we know that, I think that is the point. We don't want more crime in the United States. We don't want more problems in our cities. We have kids that need help. We have elderly who need help. We have officers who are stretched with budgets that are stretched. We don't need any more problems. So, Claude, right now, we have Philadelphia, brotherly love city. They're not going to be part of this database anymore. What could that do to hamper the apprehension and understanding of the people we're arresting for these particular crimes?
Well, real quickly, I'd just like to say in Wisner Desmarais case. He came here as a visitor. The family applied for asylum. The information I have, it was denied. They were put in removal proceedings. He was ordered deported. But then, out of the generosity of this country after the earthquake in Haiti, they were granted temporary protected status. And, to show his gratitude, he killed one of our heroes in blue. Now, his status had ended, so he should have been removed from the country. But.
And had he been removed, would have an officer who is alive today.
Yeah, exactly. So.
But what about, let's get on to the Philadelphia story. The Philadelphia story is yet another example of sanctuary city policies going into effect. How this helps the people of Philadelphia is beyond me. Claude, quickly, then Alan gets the last word.
Well, it doesn't help the people of Philadelphia, and this is just the city of Philadelphia doubling down. First, they're harboring people who are here illegally by refusing to cooperate with ICE, and now they're refusing ICE access to the records, so the people they release from jail, ICE can't track down using that information. I believe ICE should just issue subpoenas, and then when they refuse those subpoenas, they should initiate a criminal investigation, and the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania should convene a grand jury. And
Alan, the mayor of Philly was the same one who danced, literally did a Snoopy dance when he found out the judge ruled that they could do the sanctuary city policies. But as a practical matter, how does this help keep the city safe?
Well, first, I'm going to move a little bit to my conservative side and say, look, these are local people. The mayor was responding to the local community saying that they did not want this rapid enforcement there. Two, in Philadelphia, the problem was not only was it criminals in the system, but it was also witnesses and other individuals related to crimes. And the problem was that ICE was spending too much time rounding up the low-hanging fruit rather than focusing on people who really are a danger to our community. That's the problem in immigration right now. We're not trying to sort people out. We're just saying every immigrant is a problem and we need to focus on that. And that's not leading to security. We need to recognize that we're not going to deport 1,200 million people. We don't have the money for it.
Yeah, 12 million. 1,200 million would probably be there soon, too. But I appreciate it. Great segment. Right. Great segment, guys. Thanks so much. And the gap between the elites, everyday Americans, is widening. Ben Shapiro on what that means for the country. Next.